Manfred Mann, I'm glad that we have you as guest in our show, and I'm sorry on the other hand that we interrupt you early in the morning when other people used to have breakfast. We already interrupt you. But there are a couple of questions that I'm really interested in. When I look at the charts today, I see so many artists of the 60s reappearing. It's remixes of songs that had been done in the 60s, or the same artists, the same names, the same tunes come again. How do you consider this development in a music scene?
I don't accept that's what's happening.
No, why not?
Because I don't think it is. I think that you would be, if I asked you a question, I don't mean to make it difficult for you, but if I asked you to mention 5 people, you'd find it very hard.
Right at the moment?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let me start with Lulu, Venus Bananarama, which is a song.
Bananarama is
it's
not a 60s band, though.
No, but it's a song from the 60s. Its tunes come back from the 60s. Is Spirit in the Sky, which was Norman Greenbaum, which is now done by Doctor and the Medics, which is... I could go on.
You're telling me that there are old songs, not old groups, do you mean?
Both. There are old songs.
There are very few groups. There are almost no groups. Lulu is a complete exception. I don't mean to be too clever about this, but I find that every time I come anywhere, I'm always told that there's a new trend. And I never find that 3 months later everybody would even remember it. I think that the truth is that most of the music that is successful now is music from the 80s. Mm-hmm. There are a few old songs, which always happens, that people dig up old songs. They always do. I do not think there is a 60s revival. So it's very hard for me to answer something that I don't think is really happening. I think occasionally people cover old songs. And as I say, Lulu is a complete exception. This record is actually the original record. In England, it's not the original record, incidentally. So I find it difficult. I think most music that I hear and that I read about is 80s music.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fine.
An opinion. I
think it's important to hear your opinion and not an opinion that everybody tells.
4 years ago, when we did Somewhere in Africa, I was told there was a big African revival. Everyone told me at the time, African music is now popular, there's a big African revival. I was even accused by almost everybody, 1 journalist in 2, told me that I was jumping on something that was popular. Now nobody can even remember this African revival. Every 6 months somebody tells me there's a 60s revival. There's always some old 60s songs. Mm-hmm. Most of them you don't hear. Yeah.
Well, I go along with your opinion. I personally go along with your opinion because this business seems to look for trends and always is looking for something new. And I, on the one hand, must say that there are voices who say there is now 60s music, and on B, I must accept that your statement seems to be right.
I must tell you. You see, people involved in music, apart from musicians, will come into 2 categories: people in radio and people in the press. Guys in radio find it an easier job because you can play the record, say, hey, we got the new record, and you are dealing directly with the product.
Yeah.
Guys in the press, they have to invent trends. If they don't have trends, what can they write about? It's very difficult for them. So every 3 months you find there's a new trend. There's always a roots. There's always a reggae trend once every year for 2 months, and then there'll be a South American trend. Then people will tell you jazz is coming back. I mean, 3 months ago it was jazz that was coming back. Everyone was telling me, Now you're telling me it's 60s.
Okay, let's move away from the 60s. Let's go to the present. What I'm interested in also is your music. I followed your career because I was a fan of you since, let's say, 1964, and have watched your career all over these years. And you managed to be on the top of the business most of the time. Did that mean for you? You had to cope up with things that you had to, look around what's happening, because music is always moving, as you just said. Or did you just do what you wanted to do and by incident were always on the right train? Or how did it happen?
Well, first of all, you can't look around at what's happening and try and follow it, because by the time you make your record, you're out of date. And one of the big mistakes is to try and be too modern, because if you're too modern, you're out of date very quickly, because these very fashionable things change very quickly. I'm influenced by what I hear. If people make records, I'm influenced by those records. I can't pretend that I'm not. I hear If I hear Frankie Goes to Hollywood, something goes in. And I just try and do what I feel like doing at any given time.
I see.
But it's a big mistake to try and follow trends, because you'll always be just out of date.
Probably you're right. Your new record, Criminal Tango it's called, is music of the 80s, as you just said, but how far is there a connection between your own musical past, which was handmade music, and the modern type of music, which is, in my opinion, too much computerized music? Is there a symbiosis for you that you link those two things, or did you now say, well, for me it's only interesting what is happening today, musical-wise?
Well,
you know what I mean. I hope
if you're asking me, I'm going to make an assumption that you're asking me about how we deal with computers and equipment.
Yeah.
Compared to playing live in a room. I think it's anyone making records nowadays is always making a decision, which they never used to before. You're making a decision. Do you use computers? How much do you use them? To what extent are they useful for you? And how much do you want to play live with it? And it's always very, very difficult decision, because you can hear people that play live who sound great. You can hear computer-made music that sometimes is very good. Art of Noise do that very well. And when you hear records like, they're not records like ours, but you listen to Janet Jackson records, they're very well produced disco, very high quality disco machine records. Ain't nothing going on but the Rent is a machine-made record. It's a brilliant record because she's singing well, it's well done. So everyone has a choice when they record to use it live or to use machines, and everyone has to go their own way. I think it's perfectly okay to use machines if you can control them and use them intelligently. I personally use a computer. I have a BBC computer with a Yumi system, which I use, and I used on that record. But I think one of the faults with Criminal Tango is that a lot of it, the reason it took so long, is a lot of it we did start with computers, which is not our natural method of working. Now what we're doing is we're starting to rehearse in a room live with no machines. Then I'm going away using some machines. Then we're listening to the machines and playing with them live, all in a room. So that's my way of trying to use them to the best, but also try and get some spirit between us.
What I can learn from your answer is, in my opinion, that you're a little bit skeptic about too much computers. You said you must use them, or one must use them in an intelligent way.
No. What I'm saying is each person must use them in the way that they find. Now, I'm certain that some people can use computers extremely well. I'm equally certain that I am better off playing in a room with a band. The thing to remember about computers is they're very primitive. They're not modern. Everyone thinks it's modern because, in 1820 people thought a sewing machine was modern. You must remember where we're sitting. It's only 1986. In the year 2026, these computers are very primitive. Now, if you're working with 5 musicians in a room, the amount of changes of ideas and minds that can go on, let's try it this way. Quickly we do it. Somebody plays a different way, so the drummer plays slightly differently, the bass player plays slightly differently. The human computer, the brain, can change and is very flexible. It may not be very precise, but your brain is very flexible. You put 5 people in a room, they're very flexible, which computers are not. They're very rigid. At the moment, maybe one day in the future, there will be flexible machines. And so you can change ideas much quicker with people in the room. But if you really know exactly what you want, which I don't, then computers are wonderful to work with. If you know precisely, they'll do exactly what you want.
Manfred Mann, something quite different. You will be on stage here in Munich in the forthcoming days in a festival, in an open-air festival. You have been on stage also in a festival in the last days. Your group is a live group. You are able to perform live, which not everybody is able to. What is a challenge for you playing live? Because, well, you know it already. You know the crowds, and you know people are yelling and shouting and screaming and jumping and whatever. And isn't it boring that you say, well, now I have seen it, now I know it, now I can only concentrate on my music. I go back to the cathedral that is called studio and do my music.
Well, of course that's not true, and you know it's not true, but it's a good question.
Thank you.
It's not true because everybody started off being a musician, playing in front of people. And music is, at its root, that's what it is. It's mass media that has made music something that you switch on headphones. It's made music a different experience. Music always was playing music in front of people. And that is always a dangerous thing. It's never easy. You never know it. Each night is completely different. And also there's something about music in front of people that means that the essence of the music is what matters. The feeling is what matters. In the studio, sometimes it's not that. If you make a mistake on a record, that mistake will be there every time every person plays it in exactly the same place. If you play in front of people and you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. What matters is nobody says he made a mistake, played a wrong note. It doesn't matter. What matters is the overall feeling and atmosphere of the night. So playing live, also it's what we are best at. I happen to think we're a very, very good live band. I think we're much, much better live than we are on record.
How's that?
I don't know. But I have a much better instinct for live performance and how to arrange it and how to do it and how to make it dramatic and exciting. I have a much better idea how to do that than I do how to make a record.
Does the audience, Anna, your tension, your ambition on stage, that you try to give the best, that you try to be as good as possible? Or is the audience, well, let's say, foolish enough not to hear mistakes, not to recognize if something goes wrong? For them it's just an event and they have a good time. But do they really concentrate on the music as much as you want them to concentrate?
I don't want anybody to do anything they don't want to do. I mean, people are there, they've paid the money. It's not for me to tell anybody what to do. They've paid to come in, and every time somebody pays to come in somewhere, they pay you a great privilege. With that money, or even buying a record, they can do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. They can buy something to eat, they can go to the cinema, they can buy a record, or they can buy somebody else's record if they buy yours. And I never take for granted that people are there and that they must concentrate. They're there to have a good time. And the best thing that can happen is that they walk out feeling that they got their money's worth. Somehow or other, that doesn't sound like much, but hey, that was worth going to see. I'm glad I paid however many Deutschmarks it was to see it. I had a good night. I forgot about all my problems, my cares, my sore foot. I had a good night, and that's enough. You don't have to expect people to concentrate. They don't have to concentrate. It's your job to communicate with them, not their job to try and receive your message.
Okay. Manfred, we are just doing an interview, and I do have the opinion that you are witty enough to talk with journalists in the meantime.
If I'm what?
I would say witty. You are, you had enough contact with journalists to know where problems can come from. You have been confronted with boring questions and with foolish questions and with wrong questions and all that things. That means when I talk with you, I always have the impression that you exactly know where this guy goes to and what you have to avoid with your answers and what you should emphasize a little bit. Is that a reason why you could survive so well in this business?
No, I mean, if you talk about how I would talk to you as a journalist, I'm not really thinking too much. I'm just having a conversation.
Oh yeah, you are thinking very much.
No, I'm just really having a conversation. But it is true that if you ask me a question based on something that I don't believe is true, then I do know enough not to answer a question or not to get trapped into an area where I'm saying things I don't really think. I mean, somebody might come and say to me, like in the punk days, punk bands say to you, Manfred, that people like you are boring. What do you say to that? That was a question that I used to get. Now, I used to answer it very simply. I'd say, nobody said to me that I'm boring, and I'm not going to start putting down punk guys because you tell me that somebody told me that people like me are boring. So I would know enough not to get trapped into areas where I don't want to talk about. And that's true. But doing interviews and stuff, that's nothing to do with survival in music business. I mean, you only survive if what you make is good enough. That's the only way you survive. It doesn't matter whether you've got personality, whether you haven't got personality, whether you're a drug addict, whether you're not a drug addict. The only thing that matters is whether what you do is good enough.
So, as a final word, I A, want to thank you. I B, would propose that we now listen to your record after so much theory. And C, I don't know if I am allowed to, but I nevertheless want to do it. It was really interesting to have an interview partner like Manfred Mann in a show, because many of the guests we have reflect very, very few about what they do, and I'm glad that I had a partner to talk with who really knows what he does, and he also can talk about that, as you could hear. Thank you very much, Manfred Mann. There was something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, the other reason I think I've survived is that I don't actually know what I'm doing. And by not knowing what I'm doing, I don't get trapped into doing the same thing every year. I really feel I don't know what I'm doing, and every time I don't learn from my experience, I do it fresh. And I think that's very important, because if you learn from experience, then you're always doing last year's thing, because what last year taught you. I'm never sure how to do it. So I try and deal as if I have a lack of experience.
That's a good thing. You never are sure about the things that you do. That's quite good, because if you were sure, I would understand it this way, you would probably insist on something and might
go down the wrong road.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And now, as I said, Manfred Mann. Here he is.
Okay.